This video is going to be a brief run-through of an app I made a couple of years ago. It's called Cellfractal Lab. It's about making fractals or patterns. It's a small app. I wanted to try out some UI animation things in Android at the time. Okay, so let's get into it. We'll start by checking out the settings up here, top right. I remember making a tutorial. Yeah, how you define a fractal is quite confusing. It's not helped by the UI design, which is a bit arcane. I will explain by what I mean by that when I make some fractals later. But now let's read the tutorial. Define mathematical and logical rules to make a triangular fractal pattern. Each cell represents a numerical value, and the cell becomes filled if the numerical value is different from 0. Each cell in the triangle depends on the cells above it. To begin creating a fractal, you first need to select which cells that shall affect the next cell in line for calculation. So this is basically the core of the, let's say, algorithm. You define rules. So here's a summation example. Above is an example of how the next cell value would be calculated if you choose to take the sum in a particular pattern of previous cells. The above would result in ever increasing values and won't make for a very good fractal. So the orange cells here are selected by the user, and then you can define that you should take the sum of those, and then the sum ends up in the next cell. And now let's move on to the interactive demo. Below is a simplified example with a small 1x3 grid. Click to select, deselect which cells to take the sum of. So there we can see that the A variable stores the sum of two cells. Select an integer to use, and that's the B variable. Below, the input will be used with the modulo operator, which can create nice fractal patterns all on its own. The tricky thing to understand is what the sum is in each step. Take a moment to ponder. So these cells here, stored in the A variable, they are the cells directly above the cell being calculated. But let's change the B variable. If I go down one step to 1, then the entire thing disappears, because if you take modulo 1, it always becomes 0. So all the cells here are filled with 0. Here, when we have a modulo of 2, cells can contain either 0 or 1. 1 is black. If we go further up, then the cells can hold more values. Here it can hold values all up to 3. But they are still only represented as 0 for white for 0 and anything else as black. And we can also change the cells we take the sum of. We can do like all 3 above. It becomes quite different. And we can, for example, make a symmetrical pattern. And if we only select the top one, then we can only get a line because the pattern can't spread sideways. And as we will read on further here, as can be noticed by experimenting in the demo, the initial cell is always filled with a value of 1. This is not currently configurable in the app. That will conclude this brief tutorial. I hope this points you in the right direction when trying to understand this app. You can find a list of all available operators in the settings. Okay, let's head to the actual fractal creation. Click create and off we go. Let me show you all the controls first. Here you will see what I mean by obscure UI, which made sense to me when I developed this thing and mainly wanted it to be quick for me to create cool patterns. This is the main view of the app. Here you will soon see what I mean by obscure UI. UI which made sense to me when I developed this thing and mainly wanted it to be quick for me to create cool patterns. Okay, you can enlarge the available cells. A bigger grid means that the fractal can look further up the pyramid when deciding its new cell value. But let's go with the 3x3 for now. Pressing the middle cell selects it, and you can select more cells here, for example like this. And here you also see some controls, and here it's like a quick way to apply a rule for this group of cells. You can, by default it's the sum, but you can take the product or the min or the max. And here you can do what we did in the tutorial, for example, modulo 3. And then we can accept and make this a rule. And now the rule is here, and we can play it and see what it looks like. Interesting. I'll explain this view a bit more later. Let's go back and see what more we can do here. This list of rules here, they are the thing which define your fractal. So maybe I went a little bit quick there. We can see here that there's a bunch of operators here. We chose the modulo. We can do it again. And here is one of those obscure things. You saw it defaulted to 2 when I click this right arrow here. That's because I noticed during development that modulo 2 was a good starting point for many fractals, so I just like, okay, let's do that as a default value. Another bit confusing thing here is you can see the accept button beneath, but if you want to select this operand, then you have to click the green check mark. And now you also see that there has popped up an A here, and then we can go back, not accept this. And you see this first rule here is called A. So you can reference this from other rules. Let's do, you can always do like this, preview it in this view, and now you see it's selected, and you get another screen here at the bottom. So here we can also add change operator, and here you can plus it with itself. But let's change it to not equals 1 and see what happens. Now we got a B rule, and so the fractal is created by taking the sum of those 3 cells you see in A, taking modulo 3, and if or not if, but I think we have to check out what this operator not equals actually means. So let's go back here and check out the operator glossary. And here we can see logical operators. The logical operators take integers as input and treats them as Boolean values. 0 is interpreted as false and everything else as true. The output from these operators is always either 0 or 1. So the one we chose returns 1 if the inputs are not equal. Then we have to, unfortunately, remake this. I can do it quite quickly like this. So accept. What does this mean then? Take the sum of those cells above modulo 3, and then if they are not filled with, if this calculation is not equal to 1, then we put a 1 in the cell, which then is used to create further cells. So let's play this. Okay. That's some kind of pyramid. We can really make things as complex as we want in this view. Can make another one like this. Again, modulo 2 is a good starting point. It's very hard to create complex fractals though. It very often just becomes noise if you make it too complex. Let's check this out. That's very nice. But now let's see if we can combine these. And then there's another very hidden UI feature we can explore. So if you can, when you select other rules to use in a combined rule, then you can both click in the list and you can click below here on in the bottom of the screen. But if you select 3 rows like this, then it changes to an if statement kinda. And then you can change these down here manually if you want. But let's do a here and then a numeric operand here. So accept this. We have a new rule D, which says if C is not equals to 0, then take and store the value of A, which can be a value from 0 to 2. Otherwise, put 1. Let's see how it looks. Okay. Well, let's move on to this view then. Here we can see that it says the iteration count top left, and we can also play it again down right. Let's play it again. We can see what happens. I stopped it again. Unfortunately, I didn't optimize this view very much, so if you let it run, it will be laggy, but you can see a nice forest here in the middle. You can also save the rules here. We can save for, what shall we call it? Demo. And up to the right, you can change the structure which the rules are applied on. So the default is the triangle. You can change it to a radial pattern. Sometimes nice things happen in the radial version. And we also have a spiral. The spiral introduces a bit of chaos because it's not symmetrical. The starting point draws from like cells that aren't really there, so it often is not as symmetrical and nice as the other two. Yes, that's the whole app, I think. We can go and load some previously created fractals. This one I like. When you load it, you can go and directly to this edit screen, so you can edit it and play it from here, or you can where did it go? There, you can play it directly. So this is a symmetrical pattern I quite like. It's like a bit three-dimensional, very cool. And we have the destroyer. What's this? And here you can see divide by 0. Yeah, that's at first it crashed when you did divide by 0, but then I thought, why not accept it? I don't remember quite what it substitutes the error with, but tilt pyramid. It's not very exciting. Yeah, that's about it. Cellfractal Lab.